Good morning. I'm Stephanie Rains, and Carrie Kenline and I are members of this congregation who are leading this service. Welcome to Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship. Whether you are on Zoom or here in person, your presence matters, and all are welcome here. If you are at home, look around for a natural object that will be a focus for a guided meditation later in the service. Hopefully, those of you here
Hello, how's everybody? What's up, man? Haven't seen you since 1962.
Things are going great. Hey, you know what? I'm working on the buff auction. It's going to be awesome. The theme is all you need is love.
Oh, man, I love the Beatles. Cool, when is it?
Next month, February 11th, just in time for Valentine's Day.
Far out. Is this a 420 event?
No. It's 4:30 to 7 o'clock.
Bummer. Will there at least be adult beverages?
Okay, yeah, there's going to be that. You're going to have fun. We're going to have a raffle, a silent auction, a live auction, and plenty of good drinks and food.
Cool, right on, man. Because I will have the munchies for sure. What do I need to go?
Well, easy peasy, man. We're selling tickets right outside and downstairs after the service. They're $20, and they include 2 free raffle tickets.
A raffle? There's a raffle, dude? I love a raffle.
Yeah, in fact, you can buy tickets for that too. They're $5 for 2 tickets. Oh, sorry. 2 for $5. 5 tickets for $10, or a whole sleeve full for $20. That's the best deal.
Groovy. I gotta bring some bread.
Well, actually, we're really hoping that you're going to bring cash or checks, but we also do take debit and credit cards. The main thing is we're hoping you're going to open up your wallets and help to do some fundraising for Buff.
Man, I'll do it. Online bidding still chill?
No, not this year. You got to be there. So the live auction, the silent auction, you got to be there. However, the raffle, you can buy tickets for that all the way up until and on the night of the auction, and those you don't have to be present to win.
Okay, cool.
So there's some lovely baskets that you can check out.
Yeah, starting today. Got it, man. Saturday, February 11th, 4:30 to 7 p.m., $20. Be there or be square.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was our lighter moment for the day. And I want to invite you now to some deep breaths and a moment of stillness. I'm going to dedicate those deep breaths to Lee Willis, who's taught me in Qigong how important that is. And we're going to dedicate this service to Lee and Rick Herman. Rick was a longtime member of this congregation who died Friday night. Rick loved the natural world and would have appreciated this service on Wild Communion. May we set aside worries and be fully present here today. May we invite the sacred mystery to be part of today's service. Today's service is about the 7th principle, acknowledging and deepening our experience of being part of the interdependent web. In her book, Sacred Nature, Karen Armstrong argues that if we want to avert environmental catastrophe, it is not enough to change our behavior. We need to think and feel differently about the natural world, to rekindle our spiritual bond with nature. I think that even we Unitarians have been shaped by an overriding concept of dominion over the earth that sets us up to think we can control our environments, our lives, our bodies, and the earth itself. And that leaves us separate from the natural world. Dominion and separation are at the root of colonization, extraction of resources, and the destruction of this planet on which we live. In ancient religions and most indigenous cultures, the natural world is sacred and calls for our appreciation, respect, and responsibility to care for the earth for future generations. How would our lives, our society, our world be different if we recognized everything as holy? Sue Livingston is going to play a beautiful song that invites us to ponder that question, called Holy Now by Peter Mayer.
When I was a girl, each week on Sunday we would go to church, pay attention to the priest, and he would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything, everything, everything is holy now. And when I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad, miracles don't happen still. And now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything, everything, everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips. Now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-downs. Now I walk with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. questioning child's face and say it's not a testament. That'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come and say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is whole now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down. Now I walk with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Ooh.
Thank you, Sue. That song makes me cry. I grew up without any real concept of or connection to the sacred. In the 70s, I read The Chalice and the Blade and The Feminine Face of God, and I felt sad, excited, and angry to learn that God could be a she. And I hadn't known that, in fact, goddess worship, now referred to as pagan, had been widespread in ancient times and had been taken over by a cultural view that diminishes women and our sacred connection to the earth. Like a fish who doesn't know the water in which they swim, we swim in a worldview that diminishes our connection to the natural world. Robin Wall Kimmerer, in her book Braiding Sweetgrass, writes about the dilemma she faced as a scientist who teetered precariously with an awkward foot in each of two worlds, the scientific and the indigenous. As she says, when I began my training as a scientist, I realized that science privileges only one, possibly two ways of knowing, mind and body. In indigenous ways of knowing, we understand it with all four aspects of our being: mind, body, emotion, and spirit. To quote Rachel Carson, apparently I have never made it clear that I consider my contributions to scientific fact far less important than my attempts to awaken an emotional response to the world of nature. We're going to invite you to experience communing today, which is one way of deepening our connection to the holiness around us. As much as we all agree with the seventh principle, the practice of noticing our connections to the natural world is sometimes challenging, especially in winter. To quote Karen Armstrong again, if we can learn to contemplate nature closely, we find that the tiniest particle of soil can yield a glimpse of the ineffable divine.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Kenline, and I want to invite us to pause now to give thanks for the wondrous land on which we live, the traditional territory of the Lummi and Nooksack peoples that have resided here for over 13,000 years. We give thanks to the mountains, valleys, shorelines, the waters, and sky we now share as they sustain our lives. May we honor our interdependence with all lands, animals, and peoples, with the urgency for deepening coexistence around the globe, beginning with here and now.
Today we light the chalice in honor of the earth. The earth is alive, and we are alive because of our connection to her. She is always holding us. From Robin Wall Kimmerer's book again, we are all fed from the same bowl that Mother Earth has filled for us. The gifts of the earth are to be shared, but gifts are not limitless. The generosity of the earth is not an invitation to take it all. Every bowl has a bottom. When it's empty, and there is but one spoon the same size for everyone. The image on the screen is a painting I did many years ago called "The Earth is a Chalice." As Carrie lights the chalice, I invite you to think of all the ways the bowl of the earth holds and provides gifts for you. Would you join me in reciting our covenant? Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service gives it life. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and honor all creation. This is our covenant. Beth Brownfield is going to give us our anti-racism minute. Thank you, Beth.
Good morning, dear people. Those of you here, those of you on Zoom, it's very moving to be here this morning, and I dedicate what I will be saying to Rick Herman. I'd like you to take home and read the insert today and keep it, because there'll be another part of this in February. And also invite you downstairs after the service. Jewel James, Master Carver, has a 12-foot long, 3-foot deep chart on the doctrine of discovery, which shows a bird's eye view of domination. By any statistics or lived experience, the traumatic effects on indigenous peoples from the Christian doctrine of discovery and natural policies of manifest destiny, removal, assimilation, and conversion is undeniable. When a seemingly endless and overpowering force of people confronts a group of people already in place with the articulated purpose of destroying their culture, the inescapable result is cultural trauma. The only question might be how long the destruction will take. For cultures that were in existence for thousands or tens of thousands of years, it's reasonable to expect that when they are dealt a killing blow over a span of 50 to 60 years, the death, even a speedy one, will take 3 or 4 generations. It is useful to wonder if it is useful to wonder what we would do if in 5 years from now the American culture was suddenly subdued by another culture that believed that theirs was a superior way of living. Their God was the true God. Their language was the only worthwhile speech. Their history, the only history that mattered. It's a helpful exercise to ask ourselves what would happen if this young American society suddenly was rocked by cultural trauma. It's almost unthinkable, but suspending our disbelief for a moment to consider what would happen to our grandchildren's children if, in the span of the next 50 years or 60 years, a killing blow was delivered to the way of life we now know, is an edifying challenge. We would no longer be able to speak English in our schools, offices, schools, stores, anywhere. All communication would be conducted in some new language we didn't understand. Our laws would be swept away. No more regulation, acts of Congress, municipal codes, laws as we know them. Everything would be done according to some new legal system that we didn't understand and that was created and enforced in someone else's favor. Our religion would be abolished, our places of worship destroyed, our rituals banned, our gatherings or practices would be illegal. There would be no more "in God we trust" on our money. In fact, there would be no more money. The new currency would be in the hands of the others. Our wealth, our bank accounts, our property, our belongings would suddenly be of no value to us. Most of the remaining fortunes would be taken away. Our standards of beauty would be ridiculed. Our art would be trivialized. All of our place names would be changed. All of our own names would be changed. Our children would be taken away from us and sent away where they would be forced to forget English, forced to dress in someone else's fashions, and forced to learn trades that prepared them for servitude. Taken from our influence, they would be given unpronounceable new names in a foreign language. They would not learn the history of their country. They would not know who they are related to. They would receive strong messages that whatever they did, they would never be as good as those who were members of the dominant culture. Taken from us at an early age, they would not learn how to parent. That's important. Taken from us at a young age, they would not learn how to parent, and their children would receive the same negative cultural messages. Before long, no one would be learning English as a first language. Before long, our legal and educational, spiritual, and social systems and beliefs would disappear. Before long, only a few old ones would remember how it used to be. It would be useful to wonder what we would do if 5 years from now the American culture was suddenly subdued by another culture that believed theirs was the superior way of living. Thank you.
We have lost so much by annihilating indigenous culture. And we want today to acknowledge that and also reclaim a little bit of it. I'm going to share a story. Everybody Needs a Rock. That's a story for all ages and all cultures. I first encountered this book when I visited the Southwest. The art and landscape of that part of the earth is reflected in this beautiful book. I've also loved this book because I love rocks. Anybody in here love rocks? I have one around my neck. Everybody needs a rock. I'm sorry for kids who don't have a rock for a friend. I'm sorry for kids who only have tricycles, bicycles, horses, goldfish, playhouses, fire engines, wind-up toys, and things like that, if they don't have a rock for a friend. Here are some tips for finding your own special rock, a rock you find yourself and keep as long as you can, maybe forever. You can look anywhere, even in an alley or on the beach, but you have to bend over. You may have to sit on the ground with your head almost touching the earth. You have to look a rock right in the eye. Otherwise, don't blame me if you can't find a good one. The size must be perfect. It has to feel easy in your hand. When you close your fingers over it, it has to feel jumpy in your pocket when you run. Don't get a rock that's too big. You'll always be sorry. It won't fit your hand right, and it won't fit in your pocket. Don't choose a rock that's too small. It will only be easy to lose, or a mouse might eat it, thinking that it is a seed. The shape of the rock is up to you. The thing to remember about shapes is this: any rock looks good with 100 other rocks around it on a hill. But your rock is going to be special, so it should look good by itself in the bathtub. Don't ask anybody to help you choose. Oh my. Looks like we have a doll wanting to help us choose. I've seen a lizard pick one rock out of a desert full of rocks and go sit there alone. And I've seen a snail pass up 20 rocks and spend all day getting to the one it wanted. You have to make up your own mind. You'll know. And I think we're singing the children.
Now we'll sing the children upstairs to their classrooms. We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life, we hold you in our love as you go. Now, please join me in singing a hymn that was written by our own beloved Rick Herman. The words will be, it's called In the Silence. The words will be on your screen. It's also the second to the last hymn in the very back of the hymnal, if you want to see the music. And please stand as you're willing and able. In the silence that has fallen, brothers, sisters, come to see that our spirits are unbroken, sheltered in love's mystery. Come what may in these dark days, all our hearts are standing still. Love will shine again upon us, and our dream of peace fulfilled. All the troubles that delude us, things that I can barely say, truth does not survive unspoken. With a breath it fades away. Come what may in these dark days, voices could be the wind, we would give what all desire, freedom, joy, and peace within. Come what may, in these dark days, all our hearts are standing still. Love will shine again upon us, and our dream of peace fulfill. We won't fear the tyrant's anger, fear will never win our hearts. We will not be silenced ever, ere the King his throne departs. Come what may, in these dark days, all our hearts are standing still. Love will shine again upon us, and our dream of peace fulfilled. Come again upon us, and our dream of peace fulfilled. I am? Oh.
About 20 years ago, Lynn and I moved to a house 2 doors down from Ruth and her partner, Sandra Jo. By way of welcome, Ruth took me on a tour of her favorite wild nature communing spots in the Leshai neighborhood of Seattle. And she gave me a copy of her book, Wild Communion, which she has just recently revised and republished. We became good friends, walked together on a route that took us to greet a giant sequoia, and had communing dates at those special places on a regular basis. When Lynn and I moved to Marble Mount so Lynn could be a national park ranger, Ruth visited frequently, and together we sought out beautiful natural spots in the North Cascades, near rushing streams and grand cedar trees. I was so lucky. We still camp together at one of our favorite spots at least once every summer. Recently, I visited her where she lives near Green Lake in Seattle, and as we began our walk at the lake, she stopped to hug a grand old tree and showed me where, in the summer, she could snuggle down to sit in her folds. Ruth has been my teacher and companion on this journey to learn how to connect with the natural world in a simple yet profound way that I have come to call my spiritual practice. I have learned to be silent, to write, ask questions, and listen for answers. I have come to see the trees as intelligent beings. I am learning how to be in relationship with the sacred natural world. She is here today and will speak to us a little later in the service about her current communing practices. And I'm just going to ask Ruth to stand for the moment. Carrie is going to give us an experience of communing.
So I want to invite you now to bring out the rock or seed pod or acorn or leaf or other natural object that we hope you either brought with you or picked up on your way in, and just hold it in your hand. If you're like me, you might have lost it by now. But see if you can find it. This object that you're holding is part of the world. It's a connection to the wild, to the vast, complex, deeply intelligent, interwoven ecosystems. So it likely holds a great deal of wisdom. But it is small, silent, and still. It could easily be overlooked. So now I'm going to invite you into an experience of slowing down, finding your own stillness, and entering the space of communing. Begin by closing your eyes if that's comfortable for you, and taking 3 slow, deep breaths. Drawing the breath in and exhaling long and slow. Now gently open your eyes and look at the object you're holding through a softened gaze. And just begin to notice in a fresh way its colors, shading, patterns, textures. You can feel how heavy or light it is in your hand. You might want to bring it up to your nose to see if it has any kind of fragrance, blatant or subtle. Even some rocks have a fragrance. As you deepen in your noticing, there's no need to analyze or interpret or label. Just let yourself linger, as if you had all the time in the world, and silently describe to yourself what you're noticing. If the object you're holding is silent and still, let it be a guide for you into deeper silence and stillness. And I invite you to open to the possibility that something may want to be shared. And maybe it's simply sharing silence together. But you may find that you have something you want to share. A grief, a secret, a worry, a dream, a question. And be open to the possibility that this object that you're holding has something to say or show you. Nothing needs to be forced or contrived. In the silence and stillness, you're just making an opening for whatever wants to happen. So breathe into that now. So for now, we've just dipped briefly into the communing space. And You may want to commune for a longer time later on your own. But for now, I want to invite you to thank this being of the natural world for your encounter. And tell it what you want to remember from this time of communing. Say it to yourself in your mind. And whatever you're saying to yourself now, you may want to share with someone else after the service. For now, just look around the room with a softened gaze. You are surrounded by others who have also been communing in their own way with some representative of the natural world. We have entered a communing space together, so just notice how that feels. It's a tender, quiet thing in a noisy, busy world. You can keep your object near you for the rest of the service. Take it home if you like. Give it to someone or send it back into the wild if that's what feels right. And I want to thank you for going into that tender space with me. Now I'd like to invite Ruth Bates, Stephanie's dear friend and the author of Wild Communion, to come up and tell us about how she is practicing communing these days, and especially in winter.
You want help?
No, I think I got it. Thank you. Yeah, right, exactly. Well, how wonderful to see you all. So I want to start and also acknowledge that we're on the Lummies' ancestral land. I'm from Seattle, which is the Duwamish's ancestral land, and they are still fighting for their treaty rights and recognition as a tribe. Can you imagine? So I said I would tell you how I commune in the winter, which is completely different, right, than communing in the summer. In the summer, you decide it's a nice day, the weather is human-friendly, you find a nice spot, you walk slowly. Well, you can't really do any of that in the winter. So the first thing in the winter, of course, is you have to dress warmly and waterproofly. And if there's ice and snow, then you take your walking stick. And you take your long underwear. And your scarf. And your rain pants. If you have boots, you take your boots. And of course you have to have your gloves, right? And oh my goodness, I have 2 pair of gloves. I don't usually take 2 pair of gloves. Where I live, by Green Lake, it's hard to find a private space to commune quietly. But what I've discovered is that there are sometimes private times. So I can go out at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's quiet. But I take my flashlight. So I have my little headlamp, and I take my identification badge. I live in a retirement home, and that's got the phone number. And sometimes I take a hand warmer. But the most important, and I take my iPhone, of course. The most important thing I take, I also mention in Wild Communion as the one essential. You know, the mountaineers have their 10 essentials, the compass and the matches and all that. We have compostable waterproof bags, which means you can sit down anywhere, right? If it's wet, if it's snowy. I have a friend who is a stay-at-home caregiver for her wife who has Parkinson's, and she has 3 trees in her yard. So when Wild Communion came out in June, she was very excited about hugging her trees because they nourished her and grounded her and calmed her down. And the other day she said to me, "Oh my God, I'm so sad because I can't hug my trees anymore." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, they're wet all the time." So, of course, this is the solution, right? Between you and the wet tree, or between your sleeve and the wet tree, as long as your hands are free, your forehead is free, you can hug. So here's what I do in the morning. I call communing in the winter adventure spirituality. Because in the summer, heck, you can take a nap when you're communing. But in the winter, it's cold, and you really have to you can't wait for a nice warm day. You really have to be open-hearted to whatever's there. And think how lucky you are to experience this wind, or this rain, or the changes, during a walk so that's why you wear all this stuff, right? Amos Clifford wrote a book called, now I've got to find it, Your Guide to Forest Bathing. And he also started a group called Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs. Whew, that's a lot. ANFT. So he trains forest therapy guides. And what he does is before he starts his communing, he puts a stick or a rock at the beginning of the path to mark that transition place. So you leave everything else behind and you're stepping into this reality where your relationship with the natural world is the most important thing. And you're setting your intention. Okay, so in the summer, I would walk slowly, quietly. In the winter, I am walking briskly to stay warm. So in order to stay present, I may sing. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful birch tree. Into the heart of the one, alleluia. And that keeps me remembering what in the heck I'm doing here and what's around me, and I can say hello. Or I talk. I can tell the willows how spectacular they are as I'm walking, right? And I'm staying warm. So then I get to my spot, which happens to be on a dock at Green Lake, and I can greet the directions, and I can greet the elements. I'm still moving, I'm still staying warm. And then I can do my gentle qigong, which is called Tai Chi Cha, which is slow, but I'm still moving, and it can put me into the rhythm of the day. So maybe the clouds are moving this slowly, or the wind, and I can try to merge with all of it. So then finally I'm warm, and I go find my tree and hug it, and I'm silent for 10 breaths, just trying to be present with that miracle. And then, since I have my compostable plastic bags, I can lie down. So I can lie on a bench, I can lie down underneath the trees, I just line up all these bags. And then I do what I always also do in the summer. I often will say a poem that combines the different things I discovered over the years that are my intentions for communing. So I'm only going to say the beginning and the end, because I have just a short time. But if you'd like to close your eyes, go ahead, and you can imagine you're lying underneath one of your favorite trees. Before I go to nature, I want to remember I come here to get out of my head and into my senses, to be surrounded by peace and beauty and magnificence, to feel kinship with life, to feel at home. I come here to be empty, silent, receptive, still. I come here to thank, to praise, to worship, to love, to be in love. And then I can stay in that state. You can open your eyes now if you'd like to. Part of the purpose of that poem is something in it will ring a bell in me, and then I'll know what I need right then in my communing with nature. When I'm done, or when I'm cold, I can get up and leave. And Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about reciprocity, that nature gives us so much and we want to give back. So at Green Lake, that's very easy. Really, all I have to do is take one of my compostable bags and pick up trash on the way back home. Or I can pull out ivy or bindweed. And that I do have a feeling of reciprocity from that. So I'm wondering if there are any forest therapy guides here right now. Is anybody here? Okay. Well, there might be some on Zoom. I Googled Forest Therapy Bellingham, and I came up with Laura Ward from Earth Elements Guided Hiking Company and April Claxton from AmongTheTreesPNW.com. You can also go to the ANFT website, and they have a map. And you can find something near you and punch that little button, and the name of someone that they have trained will pop up, and you can organize a forest bathing walk. And it's really more than forest bathing these days. You know, when Japan started it, or came up with the term of it, it was very physical. But now it's more spiritual and more personal and more repairing the relationship between us and the natural world. So my wife, Sandra Jo, is going to be out on the porch selling books. If you're interested afterwards, I'll be out there to chat. I'm just so delighted you're all here and that you have a natural object. Thank you. You're welcome. I can take this out after.
Thank you so much, Ruth.
You're welcome.
One thing I love about Ruth's book is not only is it spiritual, it's so practical. Like the house. So I just wanted to say a little more about my connection with this communing. Just as Stephanie was fortunate to have Ruth guide her into communing, I've been fortunate to have Stephanie sharing that practice with me. So early on in our communing, she gave me a copy of Ruth's book. And here's what I'm learning from both of them. One is, if you're going to commune, make it comfortable. And I was so delighted when one day we went off a trail off of Lake Padden carrying light camp chairs. And so when we were both drawn to a giant maple tree, we just unfolded those chairs, settled in, and were completely comfortable to linger there and write about it and that kind of thing. And that tree then had a chance to share so much more with us than if I was just standing there for a few minutes. I'm also learning to make communing easy. It's really wonderful to go to special spots that require some time and effort. But what if you don't have much time, or your energy or mobility is limited? One of my favorite communing experiences was the time we took a 10-minute walk around my block, setting an intention, and then walking silently, each at our own pace, just going towards whatever we were drawn to. I felt like I'd walked through a portal and was seeing everything with fresh eyes. Even ordinary things seemed holy. Useful awarenesses just kept popping in, and I discovered some really astonishing things I might have missed, like the buck deer resting in the sheltering of a giant sequoia tree, a tree that is now like a second home to me. Afterwards, I wrote, "1 minute, I can be hearing the noise and traffic of Northwest Avenue, but 1 block away, there is a whole different way of being. The portals into different realities are everywhere. Your neighborhood is full of them if you can quiet yourself enough to notice." And that's the tricky part, of course, quieting yourself enough to notice, which Ruth just spoke to. It takes some adjustment to move from the pressured, fast-moving world to the soft, open receptivity required for communing. Some additional thoughts from Ruth's book. If you're preoccupied with worries, you can try telling them to a tree or a flower. And that can start to open a doorway out of your head and into a space of more connection. And of course, you can use your breath, a centering phrase, exploring with each of your senses, walking very slowly. There are so many ways to coax yourself into presence and openness. Both Stephanie and I take photos as part of our communing, and we both tend to write after a communing session. And then when we're back in our respective homes, she's often doing process art to integrate what she experienced, and I'm sometimes making altars like the one you see on the screen, or this altar we created here today. And it's a lovely, both the paintings and the altars are a way to stay connected to that communing energy even when you're not out in nature. So in a moment, we'll be gathering an offering to support the work of our Buff community. And Jeff will share a slide on the screen now to help those of you on Zoom know how to contribute. Here in the sanctuary, we'll be passing around offering baskets. And while we do that, Andrea will be improvising on the piano, and we'll be sharing some of our photographs, Stephanie's paintings, my altars, and we're hoping that they help to plant the seeds for your own communing. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you so much to all of you for all the ways you give to this community. And now I'd like to invite you to stand in body and spirit to sing Blue Boat Home. The words will be on the screen. It's also 1064 in this.
You can sit for a minute. I've learned this poetry form from Tessie called pantoums, and so I'm going to read you my communing pantoum. Curly willow leaves blanket the ground outside my front door. Blueberry branches have turned brilliant red. I walk with soft eyes, noticing what winter exposes. This communing practice creates more aliveness in me. Blueberry branches have turned brilliant red. High up in a winter tree, a raven rests beside an exposed nest. This communing practice creates more aliveness in me. Lichen decorates bare bushes. High up in a winter tree, a raven rests beside an exposed nest. In winter, the skeleton structure of the trees becomes clear. Lichen decorates bare branches. Paying attention feels like magic, even on a short walk. In winter, the skeleton structure of the trees becomes clear. I walk with soft eyes, noticing what winter exposes. Paying attention feels like magic, even on a short walk. Curly willow leaves blanket the ground outside my front door. To quote Thich Nhat Hanh, the miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the earth in the present moment and appreciate the peace and beauty that are available now. I want to thank everyone for being here today, and especially our tech crew. As usual, they have made us all look good and sound good. And I especially want to thank the spirit with which you have joined together today and joined us in exploring a new, maybe not new, but a communing practice today. As we do circle around, I want to remind you that we're trying to have an inner circle so that it's not so tight on the outside, and that not everyone is comfortable holding hands, so you can extend your hands without touching. And I think Carrie's going to lead it, because I'm not the singer in the duo.